All right, so we got everybody in. I'm sure a couple of stragglers will be wandering in, but take it away, Sammy.
Take it away. Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. Hello and welcome to week 2 of our 5-week cocktail challenge series, where we're going to be learning a little bit more about cocktails every week, the technique necessary to make them at home. And of course, for those of you that are more spirit sippers, we're going to dive into why we drink cocktails and how the process of drinking an amazing whiskey in cocktail form requires a little bit more preparation than, let's say, drinking it neat. What we'll be touching on specifically today is the importance of using the vermouth in Manhattan variants. And we'll be also talking about ripping that Band-Aid of using a really nice whiskey in a cocktail. Like not just using a $20 or $30 old, rye that you use exclusively for mixing, but using that good stuff that you sip neat and you look forward to sipping it neat. We're going to use that today. And it's going to be a ton of fun. I'm really, really excited to get over this with you. The cocktail we're making today is called the Moto Guzzi. The Moto Guzzi is not a drink that many people will be familiar with unless you're from the Boston area and you've been going to bars for the past 15 years or so in Boston. It's by John Gertson, who at the time was the premier bartender at Number 9 Park, who has since gone on, of course, to open drink in Fort Point. That was 10 years ago. Now he's in the West Coast doing amazing things over at ABV at San Francisco. But to tell the story of the Moto Guzzi, we have to begin with its storied ancestor, Manhattan. Okay, now the Manhattan, you all know. If you know nothing about cocktails, you know what a Manhattan is. That's how important it is. It was first published in 1833, making it older than life itself. Life magazine was published in 1884. Obviously, it was enjoyed for many years prior because, we might take for granted today that a mixture of whiskey, sweet vermouth, and bitters to be, this interesting new flavor, but actually it was happening quite a bit before then. And kind of one thing I wanted to discuss was the prevalence of getting it wrong and what happens when a cocktail is a classic, but right before that time, when everyone's messing around with the same ingredients, why do we know the Manhattan as the Manhattan and not the New Yorker cocktail as it has existed before that, or as the Manhattan #1 or the Manhattan #2? If you open up the Savoy cocktail book, referred to as one of the Bibles of any new bartender's sort of shelf, we have the Manhattan cocktail #1, which uses orange curacao in there. We have the Manhattan cocktail sweet, the Manhattan cocktail dry, the special Manhattan cocktail. We even have and you're going to love this drink, holy hell. This is called the Whiskey Special Manhattan Cocktail, which requires 3 glasses of whiskey, 2 glasses of French vermouth, half glass orange juice, a little bit of nutmeg, and then garnished with an olive. Yeah, they're not all winners in here, obviously. Sounds absolutely disgusting. We got to the Manhattan because it just was the right word with the right proportions, the right time. There's it's kind of funny. We think of the Manhattan as the best drink, like one of the best drinks of all time, but the Manhattan's real legacy is not having unlocked some arcane, previously unimaginable flavor. It's the legacy, why we actually honor the Manhattan today is for the generations of drinks that it helped inspire. And that's kind of what I want to get us into today. And I actually have a quick list of a few Manhattan variants from one of my favorite books here. This is 901 Very Good Cocktails. Out of print, but Stu Ellington has another book that came out afterwards you can still find on Amazon. A few options here for drinks that were invented after the Manhattan, that take after the Manhattan. The 1794, the 1919, the Affinity, the Algorithm, Allegheny, the Applejack Manhattan, Autumn Manhattan, Bedford, Bensonhurst, Black Manhattan, Blood Famine, Bobby Burns, Borden Chase, Boulevard, Boulevardier, Bourbon Dynasty, Brain Duster, Brooklyn, Brooklyn Brawler, Coney Island, Delmarvin #2, Deschler, Dirty Harry, Duboudreau, Emerald, Peninsula Manhattan, Fratelli, Frisco, Fumidus, Game Set Match, Gramercy, Greenpoint, Hershey Manhattan, James Joyce, Jersey Quarter, La Louisiane, Law Hill, Le Québécois, Left Hand, Liberal Cocktail, Little Italy, Man of War, Meat Packer, Monte Carlo, New Pal, Newark, Old Pal, Oriental, Red Hook, Red Ants, Remember the Maine, Saratoga, Smoking Jacket, Something Bitter, This Way Comes, Soul Kiss, Spanish Harlem, Tequila Manhattan, Tom Johnson, Verrazano, and the Waldorf, all of which are based on the Manhattan cocktail. And that's just including the ones that have a whiskey base. We're not even talking about all the other spirits, really, besides the Tequila Manhattan in there and a few others that use whiskey in addition to other spirits. You could replace the whiskey with rum and you have a Palmetto. You could replace it with gin and a dash of maraschino. You have a Martinez. It's a very, very popular template. And the sneaky secret about the Manhattan cocktail is that it's actually not as good as any of its little progeny that have been hanging around for us since the time. It's actually why we're talking about the Moto Guzzi, because it is one of my absolute favorite Manhattan riffs of all time. It's not actually even close. The Manhattan, as we know it, has become a jazz standard. It's like around midnight, right? It's an essential item to the musician's repertoire. It's a handshake that can be improvised upon almost immediately and always to great effect. The Moto Guzzi, it's a cocktail that took a century to create. It wouldn't exist without the Manhattan. So, while I usually have all these really lovely old books to tell me about all these old cocktails, this cocktail was invented in 2007, which is actually kind of an awkward time to be invented because this is when everything is starting to blow up. This is the beginning of the new cocktail renaissance. And in 2007, we're starting to use bitter vermouths and Amari, and we're using all kinds of fun stuff that we hadn't used before. So in 2007, outside of Boston, we're talking now at Bourbon and Branch, the Black Manhattan had been invented by Jim Meehan. The Black Manhattan is kind of what it sounds like. It's bourbon mixed with not sweet vermouth, but with Averna, making it look like a very dark, very bitter Manhattan. And as soon as that drink happened, it exploded the entire East Coast. Now every single bar had some version of a drink that was something brown and something bitter. That's what it was about. It actually became a joke. We said it with derision. If you sat down at a bar after a long shift, you would call it, give me something bitter, brown, and stirred. That's the way it was. So I don't have a book, but I do have a single post from a now defunct Boston-based blog. A blog I actually used to read quite a bit back in the day. It was called Drink Boston. I had to get this from the way back Internet Archives because the server is not, it's not active anymore. So here's author and former bartender Lauren Clark on this drink. Quote, "The Moto Guzzi is the white stripes of cocktails. Like the guitarist and drummer that make up the entire band, the two ingredients in this cocktail create something raucous, deep, and compelling." End quote. This drink requires only two ingredients. There's no bitters, there's no garnish. You barely have to stir the damn thing. We're really just talking about a high-proof bourbon and a really bitter vermouth. It's the basic drink, it's the basic concept, and it's in fact even easier to make because it's equal parts. Super, super easy. The drink was invented by John Gertson, who was the then principal of Number 9 Park, as I said, but the name Moto Guzzi was inspired by Kevin Montori, who was a regular at the time and also a huge motorcycle enthusiast. I did not know what Moto Guzzi meant because I'm not a motorcycle enthusiast. I do not like moving fast at all. When I was a kid biking around my neighborhood, I would brake when I went down hills. Very risk averse. Okay, the risks I take are in the glass, not on the road. I would say that this dude, I've never met Kevin. I don't know him. This predates my time at Number 9 Park, having visited there as a guest. But this is what he said about why the name was important to him. He said, quote, "The name was, if I recall, also influenced by the texture, just sort of like used engine oil." And with that, I cannot imagine any better way to appetize the viewing several. And as much fun as I've had hanging out with you guys today, I want to bring on some guests. I want to bring on some folks that love mixing drinks as much as I do when it's extraordinarily hot outside and we're on video. This is going to be, it's going to be Demi and Keith. I think we can find them and promote them. Can we find them? Oh, snap. We did it. Against all odds. You might have to unmute, guys. Are you there? Can we hear you all right?
Sammy, hello.
Can you hear us?
Hey, there you are. Right on. Thanks for joining us. It looks like you have everything you need in front of you. The rest of the folks at home. Do you have ice there?
I think we have ice. I think we need some glasses and some bourbon.
Excellent. Do you have a jigger? And you have a spoon?
Got our spoon.
A julep strainer.
Julep strainer.
And yeah, that's a big garden and the mixing glass. Great. So, yeah, what bourbon are you using out of curiosity?
We ended up with Elijah Craig.
Excellence. Right on. Good stuff. I also have a barrel proof Elijah Craig myself.
Perfect.
This is the Elijah Craig barrel proof I got 3 years ago that is bottled at 70.1%. This is going to be a big beast of a drink. I have to tell folks at home, like, it is absolutely crucial that you use a cask strength bourbon. This drink does not work if you are using a non-cask strength bourbon. Can you use like a bonded bourbon like a Taylor small batch? You can, but now you're just making a Manhattan. Can you use another vermouth that's not Punt, like Don Rouge? Yes, you can. But it's not going to be the same drink. You guys, I'm just jiggering right now 1.5 ounces of that bourbon, that sweet, sweet bourbon you have in front of you. I'm going to pour it into my glass without any ice yet.
Put this in.
So 1.5 ounces of that.
Where?
Sorry, Keith just turned us off here.
Oh,
Are you good?
I was trying to expand it so we can see them better.
There we go.
There we go.
All right, so. Sorry, what are we doing here?
1.5 of your fine. You're really, I mean, it's really 1-to-1 this whole drink. I'm just doing 1.5 ounces because I want a 3-ounce build. If you wanted to make 2 of these for yourself,
I'm going to make.
try to bump it up to 2 or 3 ounces.
I'm going to put 2 in
Go into
Into the mixing glass. Yeah, that guy.
okay.
And then you want to put an equal measure of Punt in there as well. And for folks that that are new to mixing drinks, when you're stirring, we're stirring because there's no dairy, there's no citrus in here. We're not trying to emulsify this drink. We merely want to combine the flavors, to chill it, and to dilute it appropriately. And any great cocktail is going to be made up of 20% water, just about. Because you guys are using cask strength and I'm using cask strength, this is a drink that desperately needs to be diluted. If we were just to throw this in the freezer and have it be really cold, it would not taste good at all. So let's throw some ice in. Yeah, let's do it. More than you think you need.
More than we think we need, all right. More. All right. This is more.
So you'll see that I have ice filled up far above the wash line, because as soon as I start spinning this guy, it's going to start going down. So I would throw a little more ice in the earth, guys.
Okay, we're going to put more.
Maybe another 3 more cubes or so.
Yeah, we want to be like Sammy.
See, the best drink is you can't use too much ice. It's impossible. What you can do is use too little. If you use too little, it will dilute too much and not chill enough.
It is dark. That's interesting.
Oh, it's going to be a dark, brooding mess of a drink. I'll tell you what. You'll notice we didn't put any bitters in here. That's because we're using Punt in May. Punt in May, it translates to 1.5, which basically is referring to the recipe. It's 1 part vermouth and a 1/2 part of a bitter liqueur, an Amaro. So if you have Fernet or Montenegro or Verna or Campari or some bitter liqueur at home, that's basically what they're adding to their wine. That's why it's much more bitter than any other vermouth in the market, and why this drink is incomplete without it. I've spun it for a little bit. I'm getting a nice chill. I'm already very happy with where this is. It shouldn't. It should be strong, but it shouldn't sting. It should have a really nice grapey roundness to it, but it should be immediately balanced by the sweetness of the bourbon, the vermouth.
Yes.
And this drink is dying, so as soon as you are ready with it, pour. I have a nice chilled little martini glass here. It's important to have a stemmed glassware if you have one at home, because it makes sure that your warm hands are staying away from the cold drink. I'm going to pour it very closely to the glass using my julep strainer. And if I have a little extra in the glass, I'd like to keep a little on the side. This is what I'm delivering to my wife. Oh. So normally, if we were making a Manhattan, we'd be throwing a cherry in here, we'd be throwing some lemon in here, we'd be doing all kinds of cool stuff. There's no need. There's no need for that. This is a drink that is absolutely perfectly balanced without any garnish. It's meant to be consumed right away. It is full-bodied. It is decadent, and it's delicious. Give it a try, guys. Give it a sip. Let's see what you think. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Oh, yeah. It's marvelous.
Dark and bitter.
Sweet and
Dark and bitter. Bitter, brown, and stirred.
And really good.
It is a drink that is just, it is so brooding and it's such a 2007 drink, which is silly. But if you look at I think this cocktail is only published in one book. Writing cocktail books, it's more of an anthropological exercise. No one writes cocktail books to show off their new recipes. It's about it's about trying to transmit into the future what's been happening. It's like writing a dictionary. The OED is not a trendsetter. It's a love letter. And this is one drink that might get lost in the shuffle. This might be that weird, like, whiskey special cocktail with nutmeg and olive that gets lost through the cracks. But why I want to show you all this drink is because it's super easy to make as long as you have the exact right ingredients. How do you think this compares to a normal Manhattan?
The texture's better. It's much better than motor oil.
I knew I forgot the garnish. Yeah, a little bit of motor oil.
It's different. It's not sweet like a Manhattan.
It's very complex.
Complex. That's a good word. Yeah, I like that.
If you're ever interested in making a bitter drink, if a drink runs too bitter for you, there are always two things that you can do. First is adding something sweet. Obviously, you can add sugar if you like. But what I prefer doing is adding a little bit of salt. Salt actually emphasizes the sweetness in a drink before it emphasizes the bitterness. And it actually makes the bitterness taste kind of sweet.
When and how do you put the salt in?
Well, you would put it in your mixing glass, or I kind of have I would put this on the rocks with a little bit of salt, give it a little stir. You need less than you think you do. If you were really technical about it, you can make a saline, 10 parts water to 1 part salt, and then add a couple drops if necessary. But salt is a really fun ingredient to play with, especially when you're talking about bitterness.
Very interesting, but I think it's pretty darn good just like it is.
I feel the same way. I feel the same way as well. I mean, I'm glad you guys enjoy it. I hope the folks at home are enjoying it as well. It's if you ended up buying a different vermouth, or if you ended up buying using a bourbon that wasn't cask strength, you've invariably designed a very nice Manhattan, but it's different from this. And that's one of the big takeaways I want you guys to walk away with, is that, like, I don't mind using a whiskey that I will literally never be able to buy again, because it gave me an experience I'll never have again, which is different from drinking it neat. This is an experience I wouldn't have been able to have without mixing it. So it's a really fun thing to use. I saw you also have an Elijah Craig barrel proof there. This drink also, if you're not using Punt, it's just flat. It's not interesting. It's the equivalent of pairing a bolognese with a beautiful Burgundy Pinot Noir, which might be a nice wine, but it doesn't make any sense. You need like a Barolo, or a Lambrusco. You need more tannin. You need something that's stronger to mess with it. And this is the tannin that you need to balance out this bolognese. That's how I would tell folks. If there's any bakers listening, you can't just swap out white sugar for brown sugar in a drink. If you're baking cookies, it's a completely different animal. But I hope that you guys appreciate the detail between all these different flavors that kind of happen. One last word on the Manhattan that I want to go back to really quickly. Folks that have listened to me before remember this book. It is an absolutely nutty book by our friend Gage here, and it's about the fact that I have like 6 different Manhattan recipes in this other book here. It says, with a point here, quote, "Just one parting word about terminology. It is my honest and considered opinion that cocktails are living organisms like cells in the body. They fluctuate like the tides. They are subject to the law of supply and demand and are ruled and governed by either the caprice or creative instinct of each individual mixer. Thus, it may be that they are now and then entitled to new and different names. I have indulged myself somewhat with this notion in the present work, and if you should happen to quarrel with my designations, you have my blessing and my permission to deal with your own christenings. Make this drink however you want to. You know, it's Moto Guzzi tonight. But if you decide that you want to use a different vermouth, or if you want to play with 2 or 3 vermouths in the same glass, or if you want to try it with a good equivalent for a cask strength bourbon, use a cask strength single grain Scotch whiskey. I have a 21-year-old single grain here from Cambridge, which is going to be, it's basically like the Scottish equivalent of a cask strength wheated bourbon. You know, it's, you can have that nice honeyed corn flavor. So I encourage you all to also make this drink your own. Just know the history, know the story, know why it is made that way. Do you have any questions for me before I set it up?
Can we just keep drinking?
Oh yeah, you can. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna have Phil pop back in here and see if there's any questions from the rest of the folks. But I really want to thank you guys for joining me.
Yeah,
I think we need to thank you.
Thank you, Sammy.
Of course.
Pleasure.
We can do this in person someday. You know, when things are out there.
We're ready.
I'll bring my own glassware.
No need. Plenty here.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much for letting us join you for this.
Of course. I'm gonna open up to some more questions. Phil, I got a question from my parents. They're asking if they can still put a cherry in this. You know, I'm assuming that's coming from my mom, because we started cherries at home. You can absolutely put a cherry in this if you want. I think the reason you put a cherry in it is not because it's that the cocktail needs it. It's because you want a cherry. So if you go to drink in Fort Point, obviously you can't right now, but it's very, they like to actually serve you a drink like this, and then in a separate glass, they give you the garnish. So you'll have a tiny little like a Dutch cordial glass with a little brandied cherry on a toothpick. So you can make the decision if you want to put it in the drink or not, but everyone that orders Manhattan deserves the cherry in some way or another. If you want to put it in the drink, that's up to you. I'm really happy with the way it is.
They're getting some good questions here, mostly about well, one of them was from Nick. Can you overmix a Manhattan riff?
Yeah, it's actually the biggest mistake people most often make early on in their cocktailing careers. I have my mixer here. So this was empty. I poured all the liquid out of it maybe 5 minutes ago, and see how much liquid is in here now. There's a full ounce and a half of liquid in the bottom of my mixing glass. And yes, it is warm in my apartment right now, but that's usually going to happen anyways. And you have to be aware that literally every second you spend stirring is one you cannot get back, which is why I tell people to over ice. People tend to put as much ice in their mixing glass as looks good in a drink that they might order from a bar, where you have like the line of the whiskey is just underneath the top of the ice. double it. Use twice the amount of ice you think you need, because you're not just trying to chill, you're also trying to dilute appropriately. So that's the way you can mess up any Manhattan, any stir drink, is by mixing it too long or not using enough ice. Underdo it and make sure that you sip as you go along. If you go to a bar and bartenders aren't straw tasting or tasting drinks, they have no idea if what they're making is properly balanced or not.
Mm. Now, the next question is the tip of a very deep iceberg, going down into the icebergs, the rabbit holes. I mean, you basically there are many metaphors for how crazy this could get, but in the world of vermouths, there are many vermouths. Is anyone who from in the world of mixology or any boutique liquor store knows about? There are dozens of different kinds of sweet vermouths. What are the major differences between most of those vermouths? And also, are there any analogous vermouths to Puntime or Puntames, as was corrected by Mark? Are there any vermouths that you could use in place of this vermouth? And what are the major differences? A lot of questions there.
No, sure. Yeah, I apologize. This is a cocktail class, not an Italian one. My language skills are pretty hopeless. So thank you for the correct pronunciation. Again, the reason why this vermouth is special, it's made by the same guys that make Carpano Antica vermouth, Antica formula, and it's a huge liter with a gorgeous sort of papyrus label looking thing. And it's the first vermouth that was aged in wood, made in the proper style that we use today in Italy. And I would say Italian vermouths in general tend to be sweeter, more confectionery, more vanilla flavors, tending from the fact that they're aging in casks. Whereas French style vermouths tend to be a bit drier, medium bodied, not as full bodied, maybe a bit more herbaceous. Like Dolin is coming from Chambéry. And if you treat vermouths like wines, different regions create different flavors. There's still terroir in the grapes that go into vermouth, even though it's much stronger. So what I'd be looking for is level of bitterness can change, level of sweetness can change, the alcohol content can change a bit, and then the largest variable are the literally hundreds and hundreds of different botanicals and spices and herbs that you can throw in these things. This is owned by the same company that makes Fernet Branca. Fernet Branca has 40, 50 different botanicals in there, chief amongst them like saffron and aloe and eucalyptus and mint and all these cool things. Can you taste every single flavor in here? No, but you get a flavor profile that comes from all these flavors. So I would say ask someone that you trust at your local liquor store, but stick with the basics. If you want something that's if you use Carpano Antica vermouth because you like that vermouth, do not pair that with a low proof rye. If you mix Carpano Antica formula, which is a brick house of a vermouth, and you pair it with Old Overhaul at 80 proof, you just drink the vermouth straight. You're not going to taste the rye. It's going to kick the hell out of it. At least use Rittenhouse or Sazerac or like Knob Creek rye. Give me something that's 100 proof, something that's stronger, has more spice. It's what was going on before. The reason why we need to balance this big beast of a vermouth is with a gigantic bourbon, right? So it's just as much the third question you'd ask yourself is, what am I using this vermouth for? So.
How would you store your vermouth, and how long, if stored correctly, how long can you expect to use it before it starts to go flat or just not?
Put it in the fridge. Put it in the fridge. Put it in the fridge. It's wine. Don't open it and then leave it on the counter because it looks nice. Put it in your bar because you want people to know that you have it. Keep it in the fridge at all times. All your wine should be in the fridge. If you opened a nice bottle of red wine last night with dinner and there's 2 glasses left, put the cork in, put it back in the fridge. It'll be good tomorrow. Don't leave it on the counter. You don't. Come on, you're better than that. It'll keep for, you won't notice anything's wrong with it for like a couple months, but you should use it I would recommend using it within a month. 2 months is fine. That's a good range. Have I used vermouth that was like 6 months old before? Yeah. was fine. It didn't kill me. It's not going to poison you. It's just going to be less flavorful.
Another question that related to this is, if you were to, this is from Matt, if you were to take this drink and pre-mix it, like you mix the Punt, and then you mix the high proof bourbon, and then you wait, and then make a large batch essentially for, say, a party, a lot of people, and then you want to mix it up later. How is that going to change? How is the marrying of those ingredients going to change over time before it hits the ice, before it gets into the glassware?
Yeah, I would say that there's no appreciable difference in flavor from the moment that you mix it and like a few hours or even days, assuming consistent temperature, right? So if you don't even mix the thing, you just pour equal parts Punt and your cask strength bourbon, and you add like 10% water for dilution, which is still a bit under, but you mix that all together and you put it in a container and you put it in the fridge or the freezer. That's what I would do. I wouldn't batch this and then spin up a bunch of them when friends come in. I would make sure it's already pre-diluted and pre-chilled so I can just pour it into glasses when people show up, and then it's so much faster. What I do like to do is bottle aging spirit cocktails, not barrel aging, but bottle aging. If you're familiar with our Armagnac, Domaine de Chiron, when an Armagnac gets to a certain point in its lifespan, you take it out of a barrel and you put it into big glass vats called demijohns, which allows them to age, but at a much slower rate because glass is not porous. It's not going to be, you're not going to have an angel share, you're not going to have any loss of ABV, but it will change over time. It does settle, it softens, it gains this nice patina. And that will happen to your cocktail. If you like hanky-pankies or Manhattans or martinis and something that doesn't have any citrus or berry in it, make a liter of it, put it in your fridge and forget about it for a year. It'll be different. And not in a bad way. It's really cool. It's such a nice way to greet a guest as well. As soon as you come in, you can just pour them something you have in your fridge right away. It's hospitality 101 right there.
Will it change for the better? And also, like, are there ways that you can make sure that it doesn't go bad in certain ways over time?
The only way that it would go bad, like we're talking about vermouth, whiskey, and water in your fridge, you're further fortifying your vermouth because you're not worried about the whiskey's not going to go bad. The water's not going to go bad in that environment with all the alcohol and sugar. And the vermouth, which will soften over time alone, is going to soften far slower in the presence of cask strength whiskey. So it's not going to go bad, provided that, you didn't like dig into the bottle with your hands, like, because you dropped the cherry down there and you wanted to grab it. Just, as long as it's a sterile environment and it's in the fridge, you're golden, babe. It's not gonna go bad at all. But it will change. It's just not going to change as quickly as you might imagine it to. It's just a very, very gentle. It's like it's just.
Well, do you have to worry about oxidation? Like if someone's drinking it slowly over that portion of a year, if it gets down to, one of my circuit breakers just went out. Oh, here's fine. That's interesting. I'm just gonna hang out in the dark here. But basically, if somebody's drinking it down over time, will the oxygen in the bottle in a fridge cause problems for something like that over months and months?
Problems? No. It'll change. It'll change it certainly. But you also remember that the process of oxidation is slowed a little bit by the temperature of the glass. Mm. Will it change? Yes, but will you notice a huge change? There's only one way to find out. And be scientific about it. When I had a sip of my cocktail that I had put in a bottle in the fridge for a year, I made a fresh one and tried them side by side. And it was really cool. Like the bitterness of the Fernet that I put in the hanky panky that was in the fridge a year prior was way softer. So Fernet, which is usually a thing that I actually can't stomach by itself, it's too bitter. It's so abrasive. I didn't get all the crazy eucalyptus toothpaste notes. I got the nice savory, softer, sweeter flavors underneath, like the caramel and the orange peel and the rhubarb, and that was really nice. That was very enlightening. That's definitely an effect of of being oxidized, but not, not to any extent that it's unhealthy or dangerous or negatively affecting the flavor.
Now, Emily is asking a question. Can you remind us why stirring is better than shaking for some types of cocktails?
By stirring, I mean, if you're looking at my drink here, which is going fast, I'm stirring this drink because I want to make sure that the ingredients are combined. I want to make sure that everything's cold, and I want to make sure that everything is diluted. What I don't want to do is to add any bubbles in here, because one way that we perceive flavor is through texture, right? It's why we can tell the difference between champagne and seltzer. Seltzer has much larger bubbles. Champagne has much finer bubbles. It's the difference between foam that you press out of like a soap machine and mousse that you use for your hair. It's about the tightness of bubbles, and the tightness of the bubble changes the way that it reacts on your tongue, the way you perceive flavor. If I have a bunch of bubbles, if I just shook up my Manhattan and there's a bunch of bubbles in there, it's going to occlude certain aromas and flavors that I otherwise wouldn't have tasted, because I'm just tasting the fact that this is a bubbly mess. I don't want the seashore on top of my glass. I want a serene lake in the morning. That's what I want. So that's the reason why you stir things. And again, I will challenge you all to make 2 drinks. This is the best way to do it. I'm one guy. This is also, it happens to be, it's pretty much law. No one's really shaking up martinis unless someone asks for them, or if they're asking for a vodka martini, you shake it. But these days should be stirred. Make one shaken and make one stirred. Try them side by side. See what you like the most, and then go with that. Because then if some asshole tells you that you're making the Manhattan the wrong way, you can tell them, "This is how I prefer it."
There's no wrong way to eat a Reese's. There's no wrong way to make a cocktail, as long as it's something that you like, I guess. Although there may be some ways that if you change something to such a point, it's no longer that drink that you said that it was. When once the ratios and ingredients change to such a degree, it is a different drink. So there is always that. Sammy and Tracy were asking, well, while we're talking about dilution and ice, when is it necessary to crack the ice? Because you do that in a couple of videos where you'll crack it. So
in a drink, so if I have a bunch of big ice, oh my goodness. So yeah, if I have a bunch of big ice, and this is just like a regular ice cube that you might find in your usual tray at home. There's nothing special about it. It's diluted a bit since now. If I'm stirring a drink that is very strong, like if I'm drinking a martini that's 4-to-1 gin, it's an extraordinarily strong drink, more so than, let's say like a Negroni, which is maybe half the strength of that. So if I want to make a martini, I'm using all these big ice cubes, I'm chilling it effectively on all those big ice cubes because I have very little surface area. But I might not be getting, which is equally important, is dilution. Maybe it's such a strong drink that it's taking longer than I wanted to, and I'm using a lot of ice, but it doesn't matter. So I crack an ice cube by using the back of my spoon, finding a flat space on my ice cube, and now I have all these pieces. I just increased the surface area of ice, and now my drink that was perfectly chilled is going to dilute at the rate I want it to. Now, I'm not going to use all crushed ice. I'm not going to crack all of my ice. I want to have a nice balance of chilling and dilution, and the way I do that is by using all big ice and a little bit of cracked ice sometimes. It's more of an advanced technique, and you will see it in a lot of places that use cold draft ice cubes, these big, beautiful, perfectly square cubes of ice that are super, almost too dense. They crack them because they want to make sure that they're not just chilling things. Because if I made you a martini that was ice cold but had no water in it, or it was not diluted at all, it would taste like garbage. It would. You would not enjoy it. It would not taste good. It would take you back to college days when you drank vodka out of the freezer. Oh, good.
Oh, I remember those days. Wonderful days. So one of the questions came from Nick here. If I make a drink for my guests and then everyone wants one and I run out of chilled glassware, what do I do? Personally, I would say it's red Solo cup time.
So, yeah, if the portions are small enough, the reason why you're chilling your glass is because you want to make sure that it's cold as it can be, as long as possible. And you'll see in my fridge here, in my freezer rather, I have a bunch of glasses. I have big mamas over here, but I also have these tiny little guys. These are Moroccan tea glasses that are hard as a rock. I could drop one from this height and it would not break. And I can fit a ton of them in here. I would suggest that you look into finding smaller glassware and loading up your freezer with them. I always make sure I have a couple of things in extra rooms, but even like, let's get a bunch of these tiny little, these little guys, these little tiny little cordial glasses. You can find these in any little market, and they're 25 cents a pop. If you run out, if you did a bad job and you did not have enough glassware, that means you did a good job by making sure that everyone got a drink beforehand and everyone's feeling really good. So don't be too worried about it. The first drink should be as cold as possible. If you got them drunk enough, they're not going to notice the next one's too warm. It's fine. Just make more room, use smaller glasses, and then solo cups.
Does the shape of the glassware matter a lot? I mean, because you bring out the julep glasses, you've brought out the martini glasses, and the last one. The name escaped me. It was 30 seconds ago. I've completely forgotten.
Collins, Coupe.
The cordial glasses.
Yeah, Dutch cordials. So yeah, they all have put aesthetics aside. First of all, you should have a glass that makes you feel good. You should have one that makes you smile. That is beautiful and aesthetically pleasing. As such as this one, which I got from Montreal. It's a really nice, lovely, delicate glass. I usually don't buy these because I'm worried about breaking them. But things all have a purpose. I have a stem because I want to make sure that my warm hand does not touch the drink, because I want this drink to be as cold as long as possible. The reverse of that is when you have a snifter that you drink brandy out of, and you hold it like this. You hold it like this because you want the warmth in your hand to heat up the bulb of the glass. And the warmth actually allows the aromas in the brandy to come to the surface, but much easier. Think of colder things are not as aromatic as warmer things. That's why it's super important to have that. Oh my God, it's the light. You are a vampire when you're not working. Right?
I forgot about the sun. Yeah, it's that big thing in the sky. We haven't seen it in a while.
This Yara, like you might think that the cut glass on the side is just for aesthetics, but the reason that there's cut glass on my mixing glass is so that when I'm washing this out, it doesn't slip out of my hands very easily. It has a heavy bottom so that when I'm stirring something in it, it's not gonna go all over the place. It's not like a pint glass that's tapered out. If I'm having something in a rocks glass, that's an old school Boston term where you can order a drink up in a martini glass, or you can order it down, which is just poured neat after having been chilled in a heavy bottom glass with no ice. But you can't really order a drink down outside of Boston. It's kind of like a Boston thing. It's kind of funny. All the drinks, all glasses have a purpose. And if you're drinking things neat, then, I mean, it just has to look pretty, which is fine. But I'm not too dogmatic about glassware. I think you should have a good availability of options, and you should always have at least some stemmed glassware for drinks that have to stay cold. And by the way, one last note that works for this question and the last one: if you are running out of cold glassware, it's okay to serve an up drink and put an ice cube in the glass with it, a single ice cube, just to make sure. Obviously, you're diluting the drink now, but it's better than having a room temperature Manhattan. Yeah. Liquid nitrogen, also, that's another option as well.
Just don't get your fingers in there. Let's see. There was another question. Come on. Rolling fingers, getting lazy. Can you? This is from Nick. Can I change the ratio of whiskey to vermouth if I have Antica, but I don't have a higher proof whiskey?
It's a great question. So yeah, it's about balancing, right? when I was saying that, I was referring to the recipe that we've talked about today, which is equal parts. And outside of this drink, you can go to a bar and ask for a 50-50 Manhattan. You know, just I want equal parts rye whiskey and sweet vermouth, and you can call your brands and you can get there, and it's a nice drink. You could also order a reverse Manhattan, which is another common thing to have, like maybe during a dinner if you want to have another drink and you don't want to get too crazy. If you have a really, really nice vermouth like a Carpano, having a reverse Manhattan is kind of a nice thing to have as long as you have a strong enough whiskey to poke through. But change the ratios. If you have Old Overhaul, which is a great rye but is extraordinarily weak, and you were in the mood for a 3-to-1 Manhattan, you want something a little stronger, maybe bump that up to 4-to-1. Maybe use a little bit less vermouth. You can tweak it to taste. That's why I always recommend people to taste their drinks, you know, halfway through making it. So at the last moment, you can add a splash more of this, a splash more of that. But yeah, of course you can change it. That's what I was asking people to do at the end of the show, was make sure you tweak to your heart's content, because everyone has different palates. Your Heart's Descent sounds like a book I would absolutely read. I would buy it at CVS. And, yeah, it's got just a dude with a broad chest. What do we got here? What are you
descending? Now, this actually brought up a question for me. You know, as you're tweaking and trying to add this and then add that and then this and this, just trying, how do you know when it's dead? How do you know when you've done too much and you need to just let it be and then start over?
You're dead, Jim. I would say, remember I said as soon as you put ice in your cocktail and you're going to stir it, the timer's on. So you don't really get a lot of tweaks when you're in here. What I would recommend is, and this is not immediately apparent to folks when you're first starting out with cocktails, but build your drink in the glass without ice, and try it neat. So, you know, just try it room temperature, and you can't see how it will taste when it's cold, but you can at least have an idea of how, if the flavors meld. If it's very, very, very bitter to you, it's okay, because when it gets colder, it's gonna feel less bitter. Ditto with sweetness, right? Because it's gonna anesthetize your palate somewhat. I would say you should only tweak it once or twice once you put ice on there, and then you're pretty much toast. A bad cocktail tastes like everything you put in it. 4 ingredients in a cocktail, and you can taste each of the 4 ingredients separately. That's not a good cocktail. There was no discussion. There was no blending. You didn't create something greater than the sum of its parts. So I would read that as dissonance. Sometimes people call it muddy, like a muddy flavor. It just doesn't go anywhere. Those things are pretty apparent right away, even when it's neat before you throw it on ice. If it's not doing anything, if it tastes worse than just drinking any of the ingredients you had by itself, throw it away. Just get rid of it. Move on, or chug it. I don't know. You maybe had a bad day. Try it. But if you're playing around, play around in half measures so you don't crush through all your spirits. If you want to try out a new cocktail you just found out about, and it's a 4-ounce build, and it's like 2 ounce, 1 ounce, 1 ounce, make it 1 ounce, half ounce, half ounce. Make a half measure of that drink, so that if it's terrible, if you don't like it or you need to tweak it, at least you didn't burn through 4 ounces of expensive products. You only burned through, 2. That's something that I learned far too late in life. So yeah, make smaller drinks if you're still playing around early on.
So another question. This is an anonymous question. What happens to a Manhattan as it warms up, from a flavor perspective? Like what does the cold do to it, and what does the warmth do to it over time? And how long do you have before you're just drinking a warm Manhattan that doesn't have the flavor that was desired?
So the reason why we're talking about this, about a Manhattan getting too warm, is because we don't normally do this, right? We don't put ice in our glasses. We serve them up, and as soon as you get them, the clock is on. So if I could make a suggestion, first off, make smaller drinks. Make more smaller drinks. I'm so much happier having 2 3-ounce drinks than 1 giant 6-ounce drink behemoth that someone serves me at a bar. Because by the time I'm halfway through it, I'm just it's a bummer. It's a bummer. Like, it's like the last third of Guinness after you've ate your fish and chips and you're packed full. It's 2:00 in the afternoon and you want to take a nap. It's not a good feeling. So if it gets too warm, it's over. It's over. You've lost. Good day, sir. Okay, you can't have.
Good night, everybody. I'm done.
Go home. Cut your own feed. I would say an ice cube in there is fine if you're diluting it a bit. To answer the first part of the question, though, about what flavors are coming out when it's cold, when it's warm, the drink is going to taste totally different when it's cold. You're gonna taste immediately the sweetness. The sweetness is one thing that is apparent throughout the life of the cocktail. The bitterness is one that changes over time. The more that a drink dilutes, the more bitter it becomes, and also the warmer it gets. So it's kind of interesting. So if you have like a Manhattan on the rocks, it's going to taste more and more bitter over time, which is not what you want. That's why I don't like it on the rocks. When you have a Manhattan and you're sitting on it and you don't mind sipping on a warm drink, what you will find instead is really the the stewed fruit flavors of the vermouth, not the botanicals, not the bitter nature, not the high end mint, eucalyptus, menthol flavors of the bitter ingredients, but you'll find the sweeter, savory ones underneath. That's at least what is accentuated for me whenever I have any drink that warms up over time. Certain spirits do this better than others. Whiskey is just a bummer when it's warm and diluted over time, but the vermouth is what makes it interesting. Like I will drink a warmed vermouth that's been diluted because it still has a lot going on. But man, if you just have like a whiskey on the rocks that you forgot about, it's as bad as like finding that cup of tea you made an hour ago with breakfast and you find it like the bag is still in. It's a night.
Man down.
Yeah, exactly. It's not good for anybody. It's tough. You can learn a lot from a drink as it warms up. I recommend trying it and taking notes, seeing it for yourself. We can ask more questions. I'm going to think about a drink that warms up really well, besides the one that I created, which is called the Tea Time, by the way.
I got a couple questions. Got a couple of good questions, actually.
What do you got?
So one was, do you care about the right snack for various beverages? What is the optimum snack for Moto Guzzi? And I guess the larger question is basically like pairing based on like whether a drink is more sweet or more bitter or cold or warm, those kinds of things.
Oh yeah. So that's from Emily, right? And Emily, that's a great question. I think we have a really bad pairing culture in America, in my opinion, because we did not. Excuse me. I don't mean to go off on a tangent, but in American culture, we don't have a culture that was built around wine. We did not have vineyards for centuries that encouraged the creation of dishes that were meant to pair perfectly with them. If you travel anywhere in parts of Spain, if you go to Rioja, every dish you would have in Rioja is a pairing menu. It's not going to say pairing menu on there anywhere, but it's just the food from Rioja matches the wine from Rioja perfectly. Same thing in Barolo in Italy, same thing from in Lyon and in Burgundy in France. Wherever you go, the food matches perfectly with the snacks, with the drinks rather. In America, if you went to a bar and you ordered a cocktail, didn't matter what you ordered. You could have ordered a gin and tonic, a whiskey sour, an old fashioned, maybe a whiskey smash, a tequila daisy. You could have ordered any of these things. The snacks are going to be the same. It's going to be mixed nuts and some shitty cheese and maybe a cracker. Maybe a cracker. If we get a little
deep fried pickles if you're fancy.
Deep fried pickles. Hell yeah. I'm talking we're talking like post World War II. Things were bad. The reason why cheese was popular is because cheese slows down the inebriation. Like dairy, it slows down getting boozed up too quickly. So if your lunch was 3 martinis, you needed to have just stuff some cheese in your face, cheese and cashews, just whatever you could do to slow it down so that you could be sober enough to do the next 4 hours of your work before you went home.
I'm in this example and I don't like it.
It's a simpler time. You know, watch Mad Men. They talk about it. Anyways, if you're having a really super dry drink like a Gibson that has an onion in it, you have something that is aromatic, something that's botanical, something that is savory. What do you pair with that? So you can complement it by finding like what also works well with onion, right? What also works well with all these botanical flavors. You could very easily go the route of like a tartare or like salmon or blinis, caviar, all these things. Like there's a reason why caviar is such a favorite of Russians when they're drinking vodkas, because the cunningness of the vodka is accentuated by the brininess of caviar. Think of caviar as the salt in the dish. You could do that with any other thing. So like, let's say I have a drink like a Manhattan, for example, the one we've been drinking right now. I have a few different flavors I can work off of. I can work off of grape. So what works well with grape, I think of like a grape gelée as a side on a charcuterie plate with cheeses. Cheese actually would work really well with a Manhattan. You could also go the grain side of things, where I have like I want to look at the sweetness and the confectionery quality of the bourbon. I could just easily go chocolate, a little bit of dark chocolate, or I could have a toast with like maybe that's Biscoff. I don't know if you guys know what that Biscoff is. Like that's that cookie, that shortbread spread. Like you can have a lot of fun with this kind of stuff. I would encourage you all to like definitely have fun with pairings and complementary pairings, not just stacking flavors. Don't have an Isla whiskey version of this drink with smoked salmon. It's not a good idea. It's smoke on smoke. You're wearing a tracksuit. You're wearing a matching tracksuit. It's not a good idea. It's you can do that if you're a mobster or from Northern Italy. It's fine.
Don't be making fun of my workout outfit. Not even watching me going around the track.
That outfit, it doesn't work out.
The stripes make you go faster. So we got a couple more questions here. Adina had a couple of questions. So they made two, a 92 proof bourbon and an 80 proof. What would these drinks look like? And then the other question was, can you make this drink with a Canadian whiskey?
The question was like they haven't made the drinks, but they have two whiskeys and they want to make the drinks in the future. Like they have a 92 and they have an 80. Is that what the question was?
I believe they made two drinks. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're asking me how they came out, you'd know better than I. I will tell you that if you did equal parts of a 92 or 80 proof bourbon and equal parts of the Punt, then it will be a drink that is doesn't have the strength, the raw alcoholic proof behind it to balance out the vermouth. You've made is a 50-50 martini, which is a great drink. Don't get me wrong. It's a drink made for people that like vermouth and seek out vermouth and want a lighter, sweeter cocktail. The reason why I suggested the Moto Guzzi for us today is because we have a lot of folks that are spirits sippers and fanatics of really nice high-end whiskeys that you normally drink neat with a couple drops of water, which is why I wanted to encourage a stronger cocktail so that it actually rates. So I was talking to Nick, and I'm sure Nick won't mind my mentioning this, but as much as he loves cocktails and loves that open up his world to mixing drinks, he still very much favors boozier cocktails. Not because they're inherently better, but because his palate is so tuned in to drinking things at 60% alcohol that it's more about texture and density of flavor. And I think, to answer your question honestly, the drinks that are made from 80 or 92 will be weaker for the whiskey aficionado, but certainly delicious for the person that's looking for a cocktail.
How would you balance the vermouth with the lower proof bourbon?
Just vermouth. But again, this is when it comes into mind. This is when it comes into mind that it's really about what what profile you want to have. If you want to have a more vermouth forward drink, you did a great job. You're fine. You're ready to go. You did it. Congratulations. Balloons, confetti. But if you felt like you're missing the strength of the drink, that means you weren't able to taste the whiskey. It was too low, and you used too much vermouth. So try that same drink with the same whiskey, and just cut the vermouth in half. And if you're using Canadian whiskey, as you asked, instead of American whiskey, it's fine. But proof is still the thing you need to figure out. And there are not a lot of high proof Canadian rye whiskeys in the market, or whiskeys in general, because Canada charges far more tax on high proof spirits, more than we do in America. So I would say if you could find a bottle of the Lot 40 cask strength, that'd make it dope, Little Manhattan. But I would probably stick to cask strength, angry, mean bourbons like Booker's, Baker's, single barrels of Four Roses, etc.
The things that will punch you in the face just for smelling them. One of the questions was from Demi, and they were asking how many bartenders will know how to make a Moto Guzzi. Is this a very common drink? I mean, is this well known enough that you can just walk up and say, "Give me one of these"?
No. If you and you go to, you have no problem if you order this drink in Boston at like Number 9 Park, at Drink, at Monton, I would say at Hawthorne, Eastern Standard, ICOB, probably ditto over at Bar Mizana. You probably find no issue. Like there are plenty of bars that have enough alumni from the original Grupo, the bar Grupo, owned by her name escapes me right now. Oh, jeez. The people that own all these.
Barbara Lynch.
Thank you. Yes, the Barbara Lynch Grupo. Anyone that's worked from there, they'll know what the Moto Guzzi is, because that's where it was created. But the nice thing about this drink, and the reason why I don't think it's too much of an issue, is that any bartender that has a bottle of Booker's or a cask strength bourbon and a Punt can mix them equal parts and not completely fuck it up. It's a pretty easy drink to make. I would just ask the bartender, "Hey, do you have Punt?" If they say no, just move on. Order a different drink. It's not worth making with a different vermouth. Honestly, I'm not saying this as a brand ambassador for Punt. I'm saying it as an identifier of flavor. And there's no other vermouth that they would have likely that would do what this needs to do. Identify if the bar has the two cocktails. Make sure you're ordering it at a bar that makes good cocktails already. And you can do this, by the way. Go to New York, go to Chicago, any major city. Go to Miami, maybe not Miami. Go to any other major city and ask for a drink that's equal parts cask strength bourbon and Punt if they have it, and it'll taste great. No garnish. Just leave it alone. Super easy. Thanks, Nick. By the way, I know he has to leave. Before Nick leaves entirely, I want to thank Nick for stopping by and hanging out, having a good time. Hope the drink worked out pretty well. If you guys still remember and still have some version of a drink in front of you, take a picture of it. Send it to us. Post it on our Facebook page. Post it on our Instagram. Text it to me. Do if you already drank it all, make another one. Send it to us. We want to make sure that all the content on our website is not just us. It's also you goofballs making drinks with us. Most important thing to me is that at least one person had a blast making a drink that they otherwise wouldn't have made. And I want to share that with the world. If you're willing to share it with them, that's fantastic. If you weren't too scared off by what happened with Demi and Keith, and you want to join us for next week, also reach out. Just know that it's going to cost you one picture. Thanks, Nick. Again, any other questions that I'm missing, Phil?
Not so much. There was a question that I had, if I could remember it, but unfortunately I have been consuming an adult beverage.
What?
So,
an adult beverage?
I may have forgotten what it was.
I'm just going to do a quick look through here. We got I mean, I think you could.
I remember what the question was. Okay, so say I don't have this vermouth and I want to try to spike it with something that I've got. Say I've got a gentian liqueur, like something super bitter, or a Fernet hanging out. I've got a Mexican Fernet personally. That's like, I mean, Fernet Valet is very, it's very bitter without the mintiness. Can I put just a splash of it and can I hack it, or is it just not going to work?
Well, first I'd say if you're going to play around with that, I mean, try it out. I'm tasting this right now, actually, to determine the quality of bitterness. But the way that this vermouth reads to me, having tried it neat for the first time in a while, though a bit chilled from my fridge, is it's far more savory and round and like stewed citrus peels. I think of rhubarb. I think of like Chinar or Zucca. Are two like lower proof, fuller bodied, more safe versions of Amari. The gentian liqueur you mentioned is probably a little too straw and hay and root to make sense in this drink. But Chinar and Zucca work. So Chinar has an artichoke component to it. Zucca has a lot of rhubarb component to it. Mix that with your sweet vermouth, ideally Italian. I think Italian is what you want to stick to. But that whatever drink you'd be making, it would no longer be a Moto Guzzi.
It's not a Moto Guzzi anymore. It's something else.
But that doesn't matter. Now you made your own drink. And banal. Banal. That's a great typo. Fantastic work. Bonal is by no means banal. It's a very interesting and engrossing aromatized wine, fortified wine. But banal would actually be like a pretty nice thing to sub in here. I would be interested to see what that tastes like. Maybe I would pair that not with a cask strength bourbon, but a cask strength rye. But again, let this template encourage you to try new things. Inspiration can come from anywhere. And if it came from here, then I'm glad. Continue to spread the word. Make sure that your whole families know about us, and that we're always looking for people to drink with. It's the best we can do to hang out with one another, and we can learn a little bit along the way. If you do find any cool cocktails with your family, and you ask them to make a version of this drink, send it our way. Just post it. Let us know. Hey, I tried this bourbon with these two spirits and this bitter liqueur. It's fantastic. Kevin's mentioning Lincoln Nod does a variation called the Bitter Bird with Wild Turkey 101 and Chinar and sauce. That's fantastic. So that seems a little bit. That looks like more of a take on a Little Italy. A Little Italy is just it's a Manhattan with a half ounce of Chinar in there. It works well with salt, obviously. It also works well with lemon. Remember, like thinking of pairing things with food. If you make a pasta dish that has artichoke in there, a squeeze of a lemon or like lemon zest is going to go really well with that. So obviously, it's going to also make sense in the liquid application as well. So if I haven't mentioned it a million times before, if you don't own the book, The Flavor Bible, pick one up. It's a great book. Absolute great book.
All right. Anybody? Any last questions? Looking over the list, looks like everybody's had. Adina's asking where to send photos.
Yeah, go to the Taylor Whiskey Co. Facebook page. It's where we post all of our interviews we have with folks. It's where we post upcoming things we're working on. And if you post just on there, maybe I'll throw a post up there first. But I'd say just throw it on there. Just reach out to us, say hi. There is a post that has a picture of me wearing an apron, I should be more specific. It's one of the pictures of me wearing an apron, suggesting that people join us for the cocktail seminars. Just post it under there in a comment. You'll see other pictures that Tom Leston and his wife Regan posted last week during the highball class. Add to that. You can also follow us and post this to @Taylor Whiskey on Instagram, Taylor with a Y, Whiskey with an E. There's a vegetarian flavor Bible. I did not know that. That same author. I gotta check that out.
Very cool.
There's a lot of veggies in the flavor Bible, but I'd be interested to see one for veg heads. It looks like, well. Okay. Anyways, this was a blast. I'm glad. I hope you guys had a lot of fun. I hope that you made a drink you wouldn't otherwise have had, and I hope it makes you more excited for the next drink. Make sure you sign up for our classes next week. Make sure you love us, you share us, you subscribe to us. All these classes are free, but the more people that we can have to join us on Facebook or follow us and subscribe gives us a little more ability to get even more influential folks to come in through for interviews and to give you guys more cool content. Don't be strangers. If you have any questions or follow-ups on this, my email is sam@taylorwhiskey. I can spell. Shut up. TaylorWhiskey.com. I did it. Oh my God.
Hey, you did it.
Any questions you have, send them our way. And if you are ever interested in private cocktail courses or classes, we have a variety of options that we save for corporate events as well. So we just did a bunch for Dell, which was a ton of fun. We did a little deep dive into the Boulevardier and the old fashioned. Just really cool. But yeah, if there's no other questions, Phil, cut the feed. Phil.
Always making it like I gotta do everything around here. All right.
Phil, cut the feed, Phil. You're not gonna
all right. I'm cutting it. Good night, everybody.
Cut the feed.